Everyone, and welcome to MUHI's online public interview series. For those of us who've joined us for the first time, thanks so much for tuning in. As we're all aware, COVID-19 has brought great change to the way we learn and work. In such dramatically different circumstances, making the most of our effort and energy is more difficult than ever before. For this reason, in semester 2 of MUHI's public interview series, we've managed to bring in some of Australia's leading experts in the field of productivity to help us overcome some of these struggles. For today, we are joined by Sally Foley-Lewis. Sally, thank you for giving us your time. Before we start the interview, can you give us a brief introduction of yourself?
Oh, thanks, Greg. I'm honoured to be part of this series, and one of the things that really gets me up in the morning is helping leaders and managers be more productive. And I'm a firm believer that time management, that phrase is a misnomer, although it makes sense. We use it as a throwaway line, but to me, it's not about managing time. It's actually about managing so much more than that, because we can't stop time. And I add to that because I'm passionate about leaders and managers being productive leaders. I've been a CEO, I've been a project manager and a program manager, and so I understand the drive to be in a leadership seat and then the isolation and challenge when you are there. So I bring those two concepts together, and I've been blessed to travel around the world, speaking, presenting, coaching and training, and I've penned a few books, and I just want managers and leaders to be excited about their day. And I have a made up word that I use, which is called exhaustillerated. So I love it when you get to the end of your day and you feel really good about what you've done. I mean, you're done, your energies are, done, but you feel good about what you've achieved. You feel productive and you feel like you're on the mark.
So from what I can hear, you've clearly worked with various individuals with different roles, but from the perspective of a student, how would you define productivity?
I don't think it's all that much different. It's about being mindful about where your energy is at and what's the best use of your time right now. So the best use of your energy, the best use of your focus. There's a great book by Daniel Pink called When, and he talks about there's so many resources out there about how to do something, and in his book he talks about when to do something. I think what he's getting at in his book is about understanding your rhythm and understanding that I think the term is chronobiology. And so understanding that we might be better at the maths type equations in the morning, and we might be better at the more instinctual kind of problems in the afternoon. And of course, there's probably exceptions for every single one of those. However, for a student, it's about really when you're on purpose and you create a plan, and I know that sometimes we sort of think about planning out our day and goal setting can be quite boring, and I'm not a huge fan of smarter goals. I think smarter goals go only halfway there. And for a student, I think that one of the things is really important is to be mindful of what's the end goal. Why am I doing this? What's the big picture for this? And then once you have that big picture, understanding that I'm here for today and being present today and finding joy in what you're doing.
Right. How do you think we can measure productivity? Do you think it's the time spent on studying for, is that a useful measurement?
No. Sometimes I don't think it is, because, I don't know what the science behind this is about trusting your gut instinct, but your gut instinct tells you what is going to be the best measure of your productivity. Because let's face it, at the end of the day, you know how hard you've worked, you know how much input you've done or not done. And so I just sounded like my mother then, but you know yourself whether you've actually put the right effort in, the right focus in, given the time you've got. Productivity is not about time. It's actually about doing what you can with what you've got in the time you have available. So a measure of productivity could be how much you've gotten done, how well you've achieved something, or it could be how deep you've explored something. So I'm not standing here with one definitive way of measuring productivity at all.
So we'll just shift the focus more towards your book, The Productive Leader.
Mm-hmm.
In that book, one idea that I found quite fascinating is that a leader is not a job title, it's a behaviour.
Yeah.
How do you think students can apply these behaviours in their education?
Oh, for sure. I think, and self-leadership should show up more than anything else, because as a student, it's up to you to be able to manage your energy, manage your wellness, manage your effort in what you're trying to achieve, and your weekly, daily, monthly, or semester and term input. And so your behavior, the question I would ask any student is what I'm doing right now serving me or depleting me? Is my contribution to XYZ activity going to take me further in the direction I want to go? Is it an understandable distraction, or is it completely a 180, not helping me at all? Because here's the thing, let's face it, there are distractions on the line of life. You've seen the memes where you go from A to B, it's a straight line, and then you say reality and it's everywhere, before you get from A to B. And that's reality. So I do believe we need to be being more present in what we're doing. And I think that's where the leadership or the behavior of our self-leadership shows up for sure. And it could also be the activities as a student that you participate in, and are you being a leader? Even if you don't have the title, how are you leading a cause or a message or an initiative within the student body as well?
Right. You did mention distraction there. One of the biggest distractions that university students face is pressure. How do you think pressure to perform hinder productivity and performance, and what are the steps that we can overcome this?
I think that when it comes to pressure, we need to understand not just where it's coming from, but maybe why. And probably the age-old example would be parental pressure. And so, if I look at my own experience, my parents wanted me to do better in my life than they had. And it comes from love. It absolutely comes from love. And that's the intention. Unfortunately, sometimes their behavior is a little bit more aggressive than maybe they wanted it to be, and they just want the best for you. And I love it when some of my mentors call it well-intended bad advice. And so it's about having the emotional intelligence within yourself to understand this is because they love me. And I think if there's any opportunity to have a really open, honest conversation with anyone that's applying pressure, say your parents, and being able to say, I know where this is coming from, and I love that you love me, and I love that you want me to do well. This is how you can help incentivize or motivate or support me. So don't just tell them to stop, because that leaves them with nothing to work with. It's about taking the next step and saying, I really love it when you say these sorts of things to me. It really inspires me to work harder when you say this or you do that. And I think that's going to help them be reassured that you're hearing their message. So that's just one example for you.
So I think a lot of students can relate to that. Parental pressure is a big part. But there is also pressure from studying around very high achieving competitive environment. How can we deal with those sort of pressure?
I love the quote, and whoever said it, their name escapes me right now, but comparison is the thief of joy. Now, here's the thing. I see myself as being really quite self-competitive. So I don't compare myself a lot to others. I compare myself to how well I should or could have done. So there's that self-pressure and self-comparison and competitiveness. And then there's that external. And here's the thing. We need to understand that you will excel in things that others won't, and others will excel in things that you won't. And that's just the way it is. And when, again, we can work on our emotional intelligence and our understanding that we bring specific and unique gifts that the world needs, and others will bring theirs too, it's going to set you up to have a little less comparison and a little more self-focus on what you can do and being in your best standing in your power. And one of the things that I have found that tends to shift that comparison to your students and to your peers is to actually be proud of them and to show your achievement, you're proud of their achievements and you congratulate them, and shifting out of, oh, woe is me, they're better than me. When we're happy for others, it actually raises us up a little bit better and gets us in a better frame of mind to also say, well, hang on a minute, they've done really well. They've inspired me to even work harder.
Wow, those are some very useful tips there. So, well, just on another one phenomenon that can exist in workplaces, imposter syndrome, and it certainly does exist exists for a lot of university students. What exactly is imposter syndrome?
Yeah, it's an interesting concept, isn't it? And I think the best way that I understand it is when we're sitting here thinking and we're kind of waiting for someone to say they're going to find out that I'm no good at this. Why did they pick me? I don't have anything. I'm no good at this. One day I'm going to get busted for being here because I don't fit, or there are other people better than me. And so that's an imposter coming in to undo just exactly how good you are at something. And we need to pay attention to it, but we don't feed it. When we pay attention to it, then we can find ways in which we can minimize it and get rid of it. And again, I come back to emotional intelligence. And I also would encourage people to do or to create rituals that help improve the way we see ourselves in the world. And an example of that, and a really simple one, and it's not gender specific, but it's about a gratitude journal or just being grateful. And I have a male client, I've been working with him for a couple of years now, on and off, and he has, at the end of every day, because he doesn't want to write in a pretty journal, he doesn't believe in that sort of thing, but what he will do is on a post-it note, he will write 3 things. And on that post-it note, he writes one thing he's grateful for, one thing he's proud of doing today, and one thing he's looking forward to tomorrow. And then that post-it note gets, because it's been written and he's got it out of his head and into paper, and he's almost created a reality around it. What he then does is he puts it into a file, and I get to see those at the end of every year. And some of them are funny, and some of them are, you can tell he's had a bad day, so the only thing he's grateful for is coffee. But that still works. He's got out of his own head, and he's quietened down the imposter, and he's able to see past that. And I have actually seen a marked improvement in his own confidence. And it's not that arrogant confidence, it's not that overconfident, it's actually he feels quite better in his ability to lead his team. And I love that. And I love how simple it is, and how over time and with practice, it can really get rid of the imposter syndrome.
I guess another reason behind imposter syndrome can be the difficulty of being or feeling vulnerable, the feeling that you're not reaching the class standard or the expectations. How do you think we can deal with that side of emotional vulnerability under certain circumstances?
Yeah, I think that's one of those tough ones. And I'm so grateful that this whole idea of being vulnerable has been spoken about these days. And anything written by Brené Brown is worth reading, because she's the queen of understanding shame and vulnerability. And hands down, read her work. And her books are really easy to read, and she writes like she's talking to you. So that is one recommendation. But the other thing about vulnerability is being able to ask for help. And it doesn't mean you have to spread it all over Facebook saying, I need help with this. That's a little messy, but be smart about it. Who are your mentors? Who's on staff at uni that can actually give you an hour or 2 and put you in the right direction? Who are the smart people in the class that you could have a quiet, private conversation to and say, I really like this about you. How do you make that happen? So do the work first and work out what it is that you really feel you need help in. And the more specific you are, the better your question and request for help will be, the more accurate help will become for you. And it doesn't feel, the specificity helps tame the vulnerability, because you are actually being really astute about what it is you need. And I get it can be hard to ask. I actually struggle with asking myself, and so I get it. And it's probably a little bit about how do I ask and who do I ask? And when I do the work and practice and really figure out what specifically is it that I actually need, it becomes so much easier.
Another topic that I'd like to discuss is the feeling of being overwhelmed. One thing that a lot of students notice from that transition onto an online virtual platform is that it's very overwhelming, the amount of work, the amount of emails that we get. How do we stay on top of that without toppling over from that feeling of being overwhelmed?
Absolutely. And I think that's one of the things that a lot of people are feeling right now. Students, employees, all of us are feeling that. And I think that when we can break our day into chunks, if we can look at our day and say, over the course of a month or a semester or a term, what's going to be the routine things? And so checking of emails is going to be absolutely routine. And so I would be saying 3 times a day, you check your emails only, and turn off the bells and whistles, turn off the, hey, look at me, tings and bings. And as much as our ego wants to be contacted, we need to let go of that. And I'll give you a classic example. When I wrote The Productive Leader, I decided to really test myself with chunking of time. And to chunk time, what you need to do is determine a period of time that you're going to work for, and you're going to work on one thing only. So I would set myself an intention of, say, 45 minutes, I'm going to nail 2 chapters. And I don't write, I speak, so it's faster. And so I would record 2 chapters in 45 minutes. And at the end of that 45 minutes, I would have the first draft of 2 chapters. I would turn everything off. The phone's off, the emails off, Facebook, everything's off. LinkedIn is off. And I can remember feeling the first time, what if someone wants me? What if something happens and I miss out? The FOMO, the fear of missing out. And at the end of that 45 minutes, do you want to know how many phone calls I missed?
How many?
None.
Oh.
Not one phone call, not one email in 45 minutes. Now, I was a little devastated, but I got over it. But I realized it was a great lesson in you're not missing out on anything. You know, it's about the routine and it's about the practice. So emails 3 times a day, 30 minutes. And your email checking is not a lunch break. That's different again. I would also break the day up with being at the computer, doing a certain period of time of work. Maybe it's in 45-minute chunks or whatever's going to work for you. And then the next thing is you have to pattern break. So get up and I don't know, put a load of washing on or hang the washing out or walk around outside if you can, and just do something very physically and mentally different in between each bracket of work. The Pomodoro technique, which if you Google Pomodoro technique, it's a brilliant way of working if that works for you. I find a lot of students want to stretch their working time a little longer than what the Pomodoro technique suggests, but the concept of it works beautifully, which is work, short break, work, short break, work, short break, and then a bigger break. And don't go into each segment of work thinking you'll cover a lot of different things. The secret sauce, I believe, in chunking is having that one intention. Just what's this one thing I will have done by the end of this time period? And it's a sense of achievement, which I don't think we get enough of these days. We are on this roller coaster and this the hamster wheel of busy. And busy seems to be feeding the beast and giving us this false sense of productivity, when in actual fact, I don't think it is. And what we're missing out on terribly is a sense of achievement in the smaller chunks in our day. At the end of your course, you'll come out with a qualification, and that's a huge achievement. And rightly so, you should be bask in the glory of that. But wouldn't it be nice to have at the end of each day a series of little achievements that you can actually feel proud of yourself? It energizes you and it makes you want to get up again the next day, rinse and repeat.
It's very important that you set small goals during the day, as you've mentioned.
Mm.
But one thing that I personally struggle with is that as students, and not sure if I can speak for others, but we're always connected. We're always connected online. One thing that students struggle with is just putting that all aside and taking a break. How do you think this could be quite dangerous, and what are some ways around that mentality?
Of that FOMO and disconnecting.
Yeah.
Yeah, look, I don't think you're really disconnecting for that long anyway. If you have 3 email sessions in a day, give yourself 3 15-minute social media sessions in a day. Chances are, if you actually pay more attention, not just to the feed and what's going on and connecting, but also just how much am I really seeing?
Yeah.
Is it just this habit versus reading, connecting, going backwards and forwards? You can even let people know. I have had a series of emails that I would use at times where I'd say, I'm checking my emails only at these times a day. If it's urgent, call me. You might even have a do not disturb on your phone for a little bit. People are okay. People are absolutely okay. They get it. And if you set the expectation, people are going to be fine with that. And you can even say, okay, Monday, I'm just going to have a completely free, no social day, no online day. If you could go a whole day, try it. You'd be surprised what goes on. I can remember, it's probably a few years ago now, but there was a lady being interviewed on one of those morning news channels, and she and her family went offline for 12 months. And it changed their life in so many ways. Now, I'm not suggesting that we do that. Email is obviously here to stay, and texting and messaging is only going to become even more embedded in our lives. But it's how we take control of it. And I would recommend, if any students got any time on their side right now, pun intended, check out The Social Dilemma on Netflix. Because I think that would also be an interesting way to review or to kickstart your own review of what you're doing.
Mm-hmm. So in our interviews, you've given us a lot of tips and tricks and shortcuts to improve our lifestyle, study habits, and the importance of time management. Are there any final tips or lessons that you'd like to give to the students? Any final words?
Sure. Look, at the end of the day, if you start on a Monday nice and fresh, brand new week, start Sunday night. Sunday night is your setup for success. And so on the Sunday night, plan your week out. I'd even do meal planning. Believe it or not, as boring as it might sound, we waste less money, we actually eat a little bit better, and we are far more focused when we meal plan for the week ahead. The other thing I would suggest you do is that as you work through the week, when you've done your planning for your meals, you've done your planning for what you're going to work on, if you fall off the wagon a little bit and you break your own rules, do not give yourself a hard time. We're talking about habits here, and habits take a little bit of effort to alter. So what I would suggest is, if you find yourself falling off, falling out of the system that you're trying to create for yourself, then what is something that's going to reward you to help you stay the course? Just get back into it. You see the diet, like we take the diet industry, everyone on New Year's Eve starts a brand new diet. And by the middle of February, that's usually the last people have finally let go. Now, here's the thing. We'll all break our own rules at some stage. It's how we handle the break and get back into it is where the winning occurs. So acknowledge it, maybe reflect on what was the trigger for you to not stick to your plan, and then say, fresh start tomorrow.
Right. On that note, that's all we have time for today. I hope everyone watching has enjoyed, and I certainly have, and learned more about productivity, time management, and everything about from working home. Thanks again to Sally for joining us today. If you like to learn more, you can reach out to her through the details that will be posted along with this video. Thank you so much for tuning in.